Hi folks, Bill Michaelek here. It may not sound like it, but you are listening to the Field Guides. But this month's episode, it's going to be a little different. Now, Steve and I normally research some nature topic and then record an episode somewhere out in the field, but when it came time to record this episode, it was August. Steve and I normally go camping at this time of year, so this time around we decided to invite you along with us. We spent an entire day exploring this beautiful, incredible natural island, but I don't want to give too much away. Just know that we recorded a lot of material, and I had to edit it down, so although we normally don't do any kind of voiceover or narration on our episodes, for this one, Steve and I decided it was necessary to give the show more of a flow. So here we go. I'm excited. We're taking you to Valcour Island. I think you'll enjoy it. Hello and welcome to the Field Guides. This is a special episode because this time we are on the road. Why don't you tell everybody where we are, Steve?
Oh, we're on Valcour Island.
So right between Vermont and New York,
yep.
On Lake Champlain. What is that? The 8th largest freshwater body in
I
North
have
America?
no idea. I know we are on the largest island on Lake Champlain.
No, we're not.
On the New York side of it, it's the largest island. But in all of Lake Champlain, it's the 4th largest.
So, like Steve said, we are in New York. Lake Champlain is divided kind of down the middle. One side's Vermont, one side's New York. And Valcour Island, the island that we're on, is on the New York side. And listen into the background right now, folks.
Two beautiful osprey are just going at it. And by going at it,
Vocalizing.
I mean vocalizing, yeah.
So, Valcour Island, Steve and I decided to come out here because we'd heard reports of rare plants.
Mm-hmm. And we wanted to poach them, actually, and bring them home.
Sure, make some money for the podcast.
Absolutely not. Someone just turned the podcast off right there, and now they think it's okay to poach plants. I'm embarrassed of myself, really.
So we came out to the Adirondack Mountains in northeast New York State last summer. And you remember we ran into a fella from the Adirondack Botanical Society. And he gave us some hints about Valcour Island. He had come out with his group in June to see some of the orchids that were here.
Ram's Head, Lady Slipper, yeah.
And
a big one.
He just was gushing about the plants that were here. So we are not here in June.
Yeah, so we decided to come.
In August.
Outside of the flowering season.
We've been busy. So we usually go camping in August, and we figured, hey, why don't we head up to Valcour Island? So we've been camping here. We paddled over the 3/4-mile paddle yesterday. Took a while to get for Steve to paddle across the water because there were so many aquatic plants that he had to identify.
Yeah, well, they were all torn up by boats, but it was still fun getting pieces of them and identifying them.
We've been exploring the island a little bit. Right now, we are actually near a historic lighthouse. And the lighthouse is probably about 50 yards up ahead, but next to the lighthouse is a metal tower that was constructed, I think, in the around 1920, 1930, and it basically took the place of the lighthouse. Mm-hmm. So they had this metal tower that had an unmanned light. And the osprey have built their nest right in the top of the tower.
I think it was actually purposely done for osprey. I think they actually set it up. And you'll see it even along like the East Coast. They'll put platforms on top of any type of pole, and especially when I was driving down to the Outer Banks a few years ago, just every single post had a platform, and there were so many osprey nests.
Yeah. So osprey, if you're not familiar, they're a fish-eating hawk. Would you say similar in size to a red tail, probably bigger?
A little bigger than a red tail. Even, I mean, the wingspan should be a lot more than a red tail.
I would think so, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So they're white, but then they have black wings, black bar across the chest.
I'd say dark brown.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a dark brown.
You know, because for the first few times I saw them, years ago, I just had it in my head that it was black.
It sounds like you're really setting yourself up for an excuse.
Well, I am.
Yeah.
But then...
Just say you were wrong and move on.
I'm used to doing that. That's okay. I'm just explaining.
Yeah.
So, a number of years after I was introduced to the osprey, someone described them as brown. I'm like, no, they're black.
Yeah.
And we kind of had a similar exchange to what we're having now.
Right.
The osprey that are up there, it looks like there's a male and a female.
2 adults, yeah.
And I did want to point out, as you were talking about the platform up there, the tower wasn't originally constructed with osprey in mind.
No, it was repurposed for osprey.
Right, because in the 20s and 30s, they weren't thinking about osprey. But do you know why the osprey numbers tumbled, right?
Was it DDT?
Yeah, it was DDT.
Okay, yeah.
So just like the
bald eagle,
peregrine falcon, DDT got into the food chain and then affected them, so they were left with very thin-shelled eggs.
Yes.
So populations dropped. But now the osprey have nicely recovered.
Seems like I'm seeing them more and more everywhere I go.
Yeah, but maybe it's just because you know them now.
Oh, yeah. I also have that filter for osprey. I know what I'm looking for. Okay, so I guess the purpose of this episode is that we don't want to do anything too structured. We did a little research on just the island in general, nothing too in-depth, but we just sort of want to take you guys with us and
explore the island.
Yeah, as we explore the island, identify flora and fauna and whatever else we end up seeing or that we find interesting. So
Sure.
That's sort of the whole purpose of this episode, just sort of a free-form episode.
Yeah, there we
and
go.
we hope it works out.
And if it doesn't work out, we won't even release it.
And you'll never know.
All right.
All right, cool.
Go. Before starting off, however, Steve and I decided to share some info about the island's size and use. The island is how big?
1,100 acres.
1,100 acres.
At least that's what I read.
There's some debate in the literature.
Right. Because you got like 984,
but that was
something
Wikipedia.
Like that. Yeah. Which isn't such a bad source, but
I know.
don't base everything on Wikipedia.
But our New York State's Department of Conservation, they listed as 1,100 acres.
Right.
So it now is part of the Adirondack Park,
Mm-hmm.
and it's zoned as a primitive area. So you can't build houses here. Pretty much just camping is allowed.
Right.
I don't believe even bikes are allowed on the property.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah.
And there's this structure, the lighthouse that we're standing next to, and then there's one old stone house.
Yeah.
But those are the only two structures now.
Yeah.
So there are campsites. There's an 8-mile loop trail
Yes.
that goes around, and then there's 2 trails that cut across the interior
Well,
island.
if it's not an 8-mile loop trail, it's at least 8 mile of shore.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 8 mile of shoreline.
I bet there's more than 8 miles of trail.
Well,
they cut through.
Yeah, because I wasn't including there's 2 trails that cut through the inside. And just to give you a picture of, again, the size of the island, it's about 2 miles long and about 1 mile wide. We're about 3/4 of a mile from the mainland of New York. Like, we can see the boat launch from where we're standing right now across the water.
So they don't let you establish any type of house on the island.
Right.
But you can establish a line of boats that are tied together.
Yeah, as Steve and I were
And a table full of booze.
Yeah, botanizing yesterday. We ran. That seems to be what most people seem to use this for.
Bill and I are in all of our gear, in our books, and there's people in their bathing suits walking by us. Are you guys playing Pokemon Go?
Yeah.
No.
No, we're looking at plants.
It's kind of like Pokemon Go,
But
I guess.
we did have someone invite us for shish kebabs.
Oh, yeah, that was nice of them.
That was very nice. All right, so what do you say we find some plants?
Yeah, let's do that.
On the way to find some plants, Steve and I spotted one of the island's 4-legged fauna, the leopard frog. Now, the most common leopard frog species in New York State is the northern leopard frog, Rana pipiens. We were hoping, though, with the rarity of some of the species on the island, that this might be the southern leopard frog, a species of special concern in New York State. So, tough to find. But the southern leopard frog, in the middle of its eardrum, there was a white spot. And the ones that we were seeing definitely did not have that white spot. So we had to be happy with seeing lots of northern leopard frogs. And walking along the paths during the summer, visitors to Valcour can't avoid seeing these frogs. Steve and I were continually startling them off the path whenever we were close to water. Seeing these frogs was a treat for us, since at home in western New York, green frogs and bullfrogs are in much greater abundance. Steve and I also discussed some of the human history of Valcour, but to keep this episode to reasonable length, we encourage you to look into the rich human history of this place on your own. Now, we're not going to delve too much into the history, but if you are a history buff, listeners out there, I would say look into the history here.
Super important for the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, because Lake Champlain as a border between New York and Vermont and
Canada to the north.
And Canada to the north, but it was also a way to travel from the St. Lawrence River Valley to the Hudson River Valley.
Right.
So it was a major lane of travel. During the Revolutionary time.
This is the Champlain Valley, and it's pretty nice because to our east we have the Green Mountains, which are beautiful to look at in Vermont, and then to the west we have the Adirondack Mountains, which are beautiful to look at to the west. Yeah. So it's just really cool. We're just in this little valley area, and it's so cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And the neat thing about this island here, there are a bunch of different plant communities here. Like where we landed, our campsite was kind of just up above the water. We had to scramble up some rocks to get up to our campsite. But the trees all around our campsite are white cedar.
Yeah.
Which is, kind of rare. We're in this little white cedar forest.
Right.
But through our research, we're finding that there's a bunch of other little communities.
Right, and 2 of the communities are white cedar communities. One's a white cedar swamp. That's where the Great Blue Heron rookery is.
Right.
Which is actually the largest heron rookery in New York.
In New York State.
And one of the largest in the Northeast in general.
Yeah, that's kind of one of our goals today. We'd like to get to the rookery.
Right.
It's August, so they're probably finished nesting by now. What? What are you smiling about?
No, I was just smiling that this morning, everything that we are telling each other, because sometimes we talk about what we're going to say a little bit before we start recording, and Bill was like, oh yeah, in the northern section of the park, there's the rookery. I was like, it's the southeast sector of the park. But do you want to say what the confusion was?
Sure. Again, I was confused, as usual.
Right. If only they said arborvitae instead of northern.
That's the problem with common names.
Yeah.
I brought out my literature and I said, look, it says, in the northern white cedar swamp. And then I realized, oh, northern white cedar, that's the name of the tree.
Now if it said northern white cedar.
Right. So I realized, oh, it's not the northern section of the island. But my point in starting that conversation was I would encourage people to look up information about Valcour Island. Maybe we'll post some links in the episode description so people can delve into the history of the island.
Right. One thing I did notice after really starting my career as a naturalist is that everything became so much more interesting when I knew the plant life there or when I identified plants around. So this isn't just a little hiking trail to go down. It's like I'm seeing things that I'm big fans of ever around, you know?
And we're finding plants that we've never seen before.
Oh, yeah. So we're finding, speaking of that, there's about, 16 rare plants on this, 16 rare plants on this island. There used to be 7 more, but they haven't been found. They haven't been relocated in any plant recent studies.
Yeah.
And
maybe we'll find one.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great. So apparently there are a lot of rare plants here. I mean, there's a lot of different types of ecosystems here, so it's really exciting to be here. But also history is similar to that too, in a way. Like I'm no history buff, but anytime I find out something new about a place, it becomes that much more exciting too. Because I really like to focus on the natural stuff, but sometimes every now and then I find out something that a group of people did at one point. I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty cool.
Right.
Oh no, that has nothing to do with.
I'm distracted from plants.
Yeah, flora and fauna.
Yeah, and it's not just plants.
Humans,
it's not just plants.
The ultimate fauna. That's some people. Yeah.
But you like insects too.
Right. Fauna, isn't it? Whoa. Insects fauna?
Yeah, but we were just talking about plants. So. But I was going to mention one of the plants that we came across that you and I have never seen before. Just this morning we found dull indigo bush.
Oh, beautiful little resin blisters all over it. On all the leaves and on the seed pods.
And on the seed pods, very cool. And
we'll post some pictures with that. I loved that. That was so good.
And yesterday we found a type of gentian. If you're not familiar with the gentian, it's like a medium-sized wildflower. The flower heads are like 1.5 inches long. Mm-hmm. But how would you describe them?
The opened gentians, like if you're at a computer, you should look up what a fringed gentian looks like, or we'll post some pictures because I have some that I found out west. But these are closed gentians, so they kind of look like a narrow football. They're a nice bluish purple, definitely more bluish than purple, but they stay closed.
And it looks like a flower that is yet to open.
Right.
But that's it.
So earlier in the trip, we found a closed gentian down by the first campsite before we got to Valcour. Right. And then after we got here, we found the fringed closed gentian.
I wasn't ready to accept that it was the fringed closed gentian because in our field guide, in our Newcomb's Wildflower Guide, it did say it's rare in New England. So I kind of had it in my head. It's highly unlikely that this was what it would be. But Steve kept pointing out, well, look at the pattern of the fringe. Look how deeply cleft the top of the flower is.
When the flower is closed, you can actually see the very tip of it is a bit fringed. And if you've seen a closed gentian before, they come together in like this really nice little swirl pattern. There's no fringe at all. It's like this very clean. No,
fringe.
Not in the closed gentian. No, I have a picture of it. I have it right on my camera.
No.
There is no fringe. It is a beautiful, beautiful flower. We saw it at the last campsite.
We did, but that was one reason I was thinking it was just closed gentian, because there is a little bit of fringe. Look.
Those pictures are deceiving.
Look, do you see the little bit of fringe right there?
Oh, but you can't see it when the flower's closed. You have to unroll the petals. You have to unroll the fused petals in order to see that fringe. But when the flower's closed, the way it's displaying naturally, you cannot see that fringe on a closed gentian.
All right,
but on the fringed closed gentian, you can absolutely see that there is the fringe there sticking up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. All right, time to move on.
Besides the abundant leopard frogs, another resident of the island we couldn't avoid seeing was poison ivy.
Oh, one thing that's worth pointing out is that we are surrounded by poison ivy.
Yeah.
Toxicodendron radicans. When we were collecting some sticks last night for a fire, I had to be extra careful, and then sometimes I would drag a stick Just on the side of the road is poison ivy everywhere. So if a stick was dragging on the side of the little path, oh, wait, is that the Aquilegia again?
I think it is.
Huh, growing out here.
Wild columbine.
Columbine. Right. But I was saying, just having the sticks drag through the poison ivy, I was afraid to break those sticks up because they could have the urushiol on them.
Urushiol is the volatile oil in poison ivy that causes contact dermatitis in humans. And as we continue down the path, we couldn't help discussing poison ivy further. I feel like I always need to point out to people when it's mentioned that you can touch or brush against poison ivy and not get poison ivy. You have to get the juice or the sap from the plant.
That's what I mentioned before, the urushiol.
Yeah, the oil has to come into contact with your skin. So it has to come from a broken stem, a broken branch, a broken leaf. We've probably brushed against tons of poison ivy, but as long as you're not getting the sap on you, you're okay.
Man, I just can't get enough of these sounds of nature. They're incredible.
The sound of a motor.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
I wonder if he did that for our benefit.
He overheard it.
I doubt it. All right, so we are obviously down near the water now.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of boats. We're next to a little bay.
Well, just one more thing about poison ivy. It's something that we've seen yesterday and not yet today, but a lot of plants are in fruit right now. Well, I say a lot, but a small percentage. It seems like a lot of plants are in fruit right now, which is pretty cool. They have nice little white veined fruits.
Poison ivy you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when they first come out, they're green. And then...
Don't they have lines on them?
That doesn't sound right. Maybe.
I thought I remember.
No, they might when they're in that
I
kind
don't
of
get too close to those fruits, all right?
When they're in the kind of tannish phase.
Yeah.
Because eventually they're going to turn white. So we were talking today that if something has a white fruit, chances are pretty good you want to
that Bill should eat it. Yeah. Oh, okay. What were you going to say?
That you should not eat it.
Oh, same here. What did you say?
Because poison ivy has white fruits, poison sumac has white fruit.
Right. Doll's eyes.
Doll's eyes, yeah. But we did find a plant yesterday that had white berries, and I did something I shouldn't have done. I did eat it.
He ate a whole handful of them.
And I'm still here.
He's like, the first one didn't taste like wintergreen, but maybe the next one.
It didn't make me go blind.
Yeah.
We thought it was a type of cranberry, wild cranberry, that if it was, it would have tasted like wintergreen. So I took a dangerous step for science. But it was
not for science at all. You didn't use the scientific method in the least.
But you did.
What did I do?
You were using me.
I observed you. It was an observational study on my part. If Bill dies.
Yes, that's right.
I made a prediction, and you didn't die, so now we know.
Eureka! But we did look it up, and we did find that the name of that plant was snowberry.
Snowberry.
It does have white berries, not poisonous, so that's why I'm still here.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
All right, let's move on. We moved on, and further down the trail we found, unfortunately, the beautiful but invasive flower purple loosestrife, Lythrum salicaria. Thankfully, there were only a few individuals, at least for the time being. And a few minutes later, we found a different wildflower species, this one with strange striped berries.
Okay, so we just sat down to identify some starry-flowered Solomon seal. Is that it? Starry-flowered?
Star-flowered Solomon seal.
All right.
So if people aren't familiar with it, Solomon seal, it's a member of the lily family, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, member of the lily family. Yeah. And the two most people think of, if they're familiar with it, is Solomon seal and then false Solomon seal.
Right.
So this is a woodland plant typically, and in the fall it'll get clusters of red berries, the false Solomon seal.
Right. So the Solomon seal, just to quickly describe that one, underneath each leaf it'll have a flower.
Right.
And so the berries develop underneath the plant, where the false Solomon seal, all the flowers and berries are clustered at the very tip of the plant. And so that would be the big difference between the two, just the very obvious difference. And we were just looking at the star-flowered Solomon seal.
There you go.
And it has these really interesting striped berries, these black stripes, and sort of like a yellowish green, or it's sort of a dull yellowish green color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those black stripes on the berries, I haven't seen that before.
Right.
Yeah. So that's very indicative of this species.
Right. And I'm glad we saw these. I'm glad we were talking about stripes again. Because right where we sat down, there's actually more poison ivy, and they do have a bunch of berries on them. And now that we're looking closer, I was technically wrong. I was being very general when I was speaking, but what I was imagining was sort of pigment stripes, where there are stripes on the poison ivy berries, or the poison ivy fruits, because I don't know if they're a berry or not.
True.
Yeah. So on the poison ivy fruits, there are stripes, but they're more indents than pigment.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a difference. And there's a lot in there. How many would you say? There's
a cluster.
More than 10.
Yeah, and they're small. They're less than 1/8 of an inch.
Right.
So these are tiny fruits. They're kind of hidden in under the leaves. And right now, did you already say they're like a light green color?
No, I didn't say the color.
Yeah, so they will eventually be turning white, though.
Right. Right now, they're just a little bit more dull than the leaves themselves.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know if we mentioned this earlier. We may have, but we're surrounded all the time on this island by poison ivy.
Yeah.
Everywhere we go, poison ivy's everywhere.
And
yeah.
in my research, I found that when poison ivy was mentioned on different websites, especially state conservation department websites, it was often included in the noxious weeds department or the webpage or the harmful plants webpage.
Right.
Which I feel is a little unfair because while poison ivy is definitely detrimental to humans and that it can cause dermatitis, it's a very valuable wildlife plant. Over 40 or 50 species of birds feed on it, mammals feed on it regularly. It really only impacts people, gives us a reaction.
And it is native, right?
It is native.
Yeah.
And I've heard that pigs can also get poison ivy. And I have read some reports of some dogs and cats getting it.
I haven't heard that dogs and cats get it. I heard that they get the oils on their fur, and then when you bring them back into your house, then you can get poison ivy even though you never came in contact with the plant.
Because I've had people tell me, oh, I can get poison ivy just by standing near it, and that is not true. It has to be contact dermatitis. Your skin has to come in contact with the oil. So what typically happens is they may not realize they have the oil on their shoes or on a pet, and then later on when they touch that surface, then there's the contact.
Right.
Yeah. But you got to be in contact with it. And I also saw it on one website listed as an invasive species. But I would not consider it an invasive species. Whenever I've run into poison ivy, even when it's abundant like it is here at Valcour, there's still a lot of other plants. It's right here. It's mixed in with all the star-flowered salaman seal.
Right.
It's definitely not preventing.
But invasive isn't a character of whether it's native or not, right? So
Correct.
It's just invasive. You can have an invasive
native.
Yeah, like an aggressive native.
Right, because black locust trees, they can be invasive in certain situations.
Right.
And they're a native tree.
Yeah.
So just because it's invasive, it still may be native or it may be exotic.
Right. And we were walking before, and we've seen carpets of ivy, or poison ivy, and it did still look like other things were growing there, and it didn't seem like an unhealthy woods. There's a huge understory. I mean, it's a really dense understory, so it seems relatively healthy.
Yeah. So you just got to be careful.
Yeah.
Whenever we're sitting down, we're taking a look around and making sure we're not sitting right on poison ivy.
Right. Holy cow. Let's get out of here. This is like Boat City.
Yeah.
How many boats would you say? More than 30?
Oh, definitely.
Holy cow.
A lot of boats here.
Yeah. All right, let's get out of here.
All right. By this point, we had recorded 75 species since landing on the island. In the interest of time, we weren't stopping to attempt an ID on everything we saw, but at the rate we were going, we wouldn't be back to camp until well after dark. We had just come to a side trail leading to something called Paradise Bay. I wanted to keep going on the main trail, but Steve couldn't resist being sidetracked.
Okay, we just think we saw either a redhead or a common merganser, so we're trying to check it out. Oh, okay. Oh, there's a whole bunch of them. Here, hold the mic.
Got it. So it's a medium to large duck, blackish, grayish colors on most of the body, but the head is a rusty brown. Steve just took a picture, zooming in.
Kind of looks merganser-ish to me, because the redhead is a really rounded...
Yeah, look at that bill.
Look at that bill.
Yeah.
What is it, Mergus serrator for the... Do you know what that means? Or do you know what that
serrated teeth?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They have some pretty cool
Not
teeth.
but...
Yeah. Just a serrated part of the bill.
Yeah.
Hopefully I don't die going down here.
This is part of the island called Paradise Bay. And this is actually the one bay that we've been in where there are no boats.
Yeah, this is the first nice, secluded bay, and it's beautiful. We'll share some pictures of it.
But I think it's because it's surrounded by
rock.
Cliffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sheer cliffs, too. We can't even make it to that other beach.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
It's just a nice pebbly shore. Yeah.
Paradise Bay was beautiful. A beach composed of big round cobbles, rubbed round and smooth by the action of the waves. We climbed on the cliffs and explored a small cave, but we didn't linger too long. We were soon back on the main trail, following the perimeter of Valcour.
All right, well, we just left Paradise Bay, and we just came across a starflower.
Yep, so this is a plant of the woodland floor. It has a whorl of leaves, 6 to 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the leaves are a little longer than others. We were trying to decide whether this was starflower or...
wild cucumber root.
Right, or
Yeah.
Indian cucumber
Oh,
root.
Indian cucumber root, sorry.
Right. But then we remembered that Indian cucumber root, when it flowers, the flower develops almost on like a second level. It sends up
Yeah.
a flowering stalk.
An umbrella on top of an umbrella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas starflower just sends out a small white flower above the leaves.
Yeah, starflower is one of my favorite ones that we see every single year when we come up to the Adirondacks. I
And then-
usually consider it more of a higher elevation species.
And every year we say, is that starflower or Indian cucumber root?
Yeah, and I bet there's some plant people out there that are like, why would you confuse those? But come on, you can see it deep down. You can see the confusion.
Oh, yeah.
Just for a second.
And we've just realized that we've been out for 6 hours, and we've only covered about 1/3 of the distance we need to travel today.
Yeah, we keep identifying plants off mic that we're like, this isn't interesting enough to put on there, and exploring caves and just relaxing.
But one thing we do want to do is get to the heron rookery,
Yeah.
because even if the herons aren't there, the nests themselves, we'd like to see those and describe those for the people listening.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, well, we'll chime in again when we find something interesting.
We picked up the pace at this point, now stopping only occasionally. We did identify a shorebird. It took us a while, but we figured out it was the lesser yellowlegs. We found some heart-shaped hoof prints, our first evidence of deer on the island. We also came across the eerie cluster of white berries that belong to a plant known as doll's eyes, or white baneberry, Actea pachypoda. By the time we made it to the vicinity of the heron rookery, we had recorded over 100 species.
Okay, we think we just got to the southeast tip of the island, and so now we're generally in the area that you would expect the rookery to be. So just a couple points. I think we may have said a couple of these things about the rookery early on, but this is the largest rookery in New York State, and did you know this, Bill? It's the 3rd largest in the Great Lakes region.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's up there. In 2004, there was 416 active nests. In 2001, that was actually the peak number of nests that were active, 552 active nests.
Wow.
They told us that the northern white cedar swamp, this is where we would find the rookery, but we're not really in a swamp area right now.
No.
So I think...
hoping as we head up the trail, it'll become more swampy. Now, did we say what kind of rookery it is?
Oh, a great blue heron, Ardea herodias. I think it has something hero, I don't remember. The heron hero. We scoured the southeast corner of that island. We couldn't be sure if the trail we were on, called the Perimeter Trail, cut through the rookery or not, so we kept making forays off trail, heading inland, searching for any sign of the herons or their rookery. All right, so what we're doing right now is we're still looking for the rookery.
We are off trail.
Off trail. Now, you shouldn't always look for rookeries, and they actually say in one of the pamphlets that we got that the rookery should not be disturbed between May and August, because that's when breeding's occurring. March and August.
March through August.
It's like the end of August.
Well, it's mid-August.
We haven't seen a single heron yet.
With
so.
conditions this year, yeah, I mean, I'm betting they aren't breeding right now.
Oh, it goes further downhill over there.
Looks pretty dense in that direction.
Yeah. I mean, the nest should not be hard to miss. Or
They should be hard to miss.
they should be hard to miss. That's what I mean.
You're tired. It's okay.
Yeah. There's a heron rookery in Iroquois back home.
The Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge.
Yeah, and that one's incredible. Have you
Yeah.
been to that one?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just huge nests, tons of them up in the trees. Like a city in the trees.
Yeah. All right.
Want to keep moving?
Yeah.
Which way do you want to go? North or west?
North.
All right. Eventually, we reached the western side of the island, so we knew the rookery wasn't along the trail. As we headed north along Valcour's western shore, we came to a trail that cut back across the island, and we decided to take it, hoping that maybe this trail would intersect the rookery. But after another mile of hiking... All right, we're at Smuggler's Harbor.
We didn't find it! Well,
We tried.
yeah.
A for effort.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, we really did try a whole lot.
Yeah.
We even came back to a place we've already been. Smuggler's Harbor.
So, I think what we need to do is come back when breeding season is in full swing. And I know they're pretty noisy when they're breeding.
Right. Be hard to miss them. All right. Well, I guess we should head back to camp and then wrap up the podcast and
call it a night.
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
Me too.
Let's do it.
All right, let's head back.
Yeah.
We are back from Valcour Island, and we are now in Syracuse, New York.
Yeah, we just ate at Strong Hearts.
Yes, we should give a shout out to Strong Hearts. So anytime we're passing through this area, we stop at Strong Hearts Cafe. They're a vegan restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
This is appropriate to mention because our last episode was all about eating vegan.
Right.
All right, so as far as the hike we did on Valcour, unfortunately,
we didn't see the heron rookery. We looked all over for it, but it didn't work out.
But
no.
we did get to see a great egret.
Yeah, so that was good.
Yeah.
A bright white, close relative of the Great Blue Heron.
Right, it was our, what do you call it? Oh, I can't think of the word.
Second place prize.
Consolation prize.
Consolation prize.
Yeah. And we did get a good number of species. So we encountered 118 species that we recorded.
And I do want to mention that we completely ignored, to our best ability, we basically ignored everything in the composite family.
Right.
Or the aster family, as some of us say. So we didn't look at any of the goldenrods, referenced episode 1. Yeah. And we didn't really focus on many other asters.
We just wanted to focus on stuff that we might not see at home.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't think we told people that last night when we got back after our hike, because right now as we're recording this is Sunday, and the last time we talked to you folks on mic, it was Saturday.
At about 7:30 on Saturday.
That's when we finished up our hike. So when we got into camp, the people at the campsite next to us, they said that they heard there was a storm coming in. It was already pretty windy, and we were feeling a little nervous. We were in kayaks, and we did not want to, on Sunday morning, have to paddle across the open waters of Lake Champlain in high winds.
Early on Saturday, we were seeing white caps on a lot of those waves, and that's not something we wanted to do in the kayaks. So we decided to head out. Well, Bill approached me at about 7:45 last night, and he's like, "Do you think we could pack up and get back to the mainland before the sun goes down?" Which is like around 8:30.
Right, and I enticed Steve by saying, "I'll pay for the hotel room."
Yeah, because I'm like, I cannot afford a hotel room right now.
But I didn't quite think it through because we paddled across the waters. It was a little scary, with a little wavy, but we made it across. But trying to find a hotel room...
And then began the 1.5 to 2 hour search for a hotel room.
In the Adirondack Mountains on a Saturday night, virtually impossible.
We're also looking for camping sites, but
they
filled.
were all full.
Everything
was
filled.
full. Yeah. So we managed to get a relatively cheap room at a kind of a scary motel.
Yeah.
But we were so tired we didn't care.
Right.
Yeah. So we woke up early this morning, and just to kind of cap off our little adventure, we headed up Whiteface Mountain.
Right, the 5th tallest high peak in the Adirondacks.
Yeah, the 5th tallest mountain in New York State.
Oh, yeah, right.
So some great views from up there.
Yep.
We'll be posting some pictures.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, so before we wrap up, we want to give a big thanks to friend of the Field Guides, Jerry Thurn. Why?
He recently emailed us to let us know that we were rambling a bit about Celsius and Fahrenheit. And
in one of our episodes.
It just got a little convoluted, and he just suggested that maybe from now on we just stick to one temperature measurement system, and we just go with that one. And we completely agree.
Totally.
It was just a little thing we hadn't thought of. Bill and I didn't talk about it beforehand, so, one of us is saying, like, Celsius, the other one is saying Fahrenheit, and then even, I'm sure one of us said both Celsius and Fahrenheit, and it does get a little confusing. So I think from now on, we're just going to stick to one. We haven't totally decided which one yet. Should we follow what everyone else in the world is doing and go with Celsius? Or because the vast majority of our audience is in America, should we stick to Fahrenheit? We don't know yet. We don't know.
Being who you are, we'll spend way too much time debating it.
Yeah.
Off mic.
Yes, exactly right.
So thanks to Jerry Thurn for giving us our first listener mail.
Right, and if anyone else has their own listener mail to send in, whether it's an idea for the show or maybe a way we can make the show better, or just a complaint, or you guys want to troll us or something, that's fine. We're at the Field Guides Podcast at gmail.com.
Yep, so you can drop us an email that way. You can always also contact us through our Facebook page as well.
Absolutely right, yeah.
And the two other things we want to mention, we do have a Twitter feed now, so please follow us there. It's at Field Guides Pod. And then we also have set up an Instagram account.
So that's Instagram.com/Field Guides Podcast.
And then the final thing we want to mention, I'll let Steve intro.
Right. So
This is big.
Yeah, this is big. So we recently set up a Patreon account. So Patreon is a site where you can support content creators. Many people who listen to the show may know that websites are expensive to keep up. We pay month to month. And just general cost for the show.
It's not free, folks.
It's not free. And you know, Bill and I, we do this show for ourselves, but it is nice to get the information out there, and we want to make sure we can keep doing it. And if you like the show, if you want to support us, if you want to invest in a better show, this is the best way to do it.
That's right, because people have said before that sometimes the sound quality, they'd like that to improve.
Right.
Well,
Better mics?
That's right.
Yeah. If we could afford better mics sometime in the future, even if Bill and I had our own mics or something, that might help a lot.
Right. So Patreon is donations to Patreon is one way that we could do that.
If we could just hire someone, like if we made nothing and we could just hire someone to do all of our social media stuff, I'd be the happiest person ever.
Or the editing.
Yeah, or the editing.
Or
we
the
just
editing.
get an editor.
Yeah.
No, that'll never happen. We'll never make enough money to get an editor or a social media person.
So if you'd like to make a donation to our Patreon page, where do people need to go?
So they go to patreon.com/thefieldguides.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we do want to mention that any donations that come in, we're going to be taking 10% of those donations and sending them to kiva.com.
Right, and we specifically want to invest that money. Well, it's not an investment. It's a loan. It's a micro loan.
So what is Kiva? Just in case people don't know.
So kiva.com, you can essentially search for projects that you want to lend to based on the category. So we're specifically looking at environmental projects. We're focused on lending to developing countries.
Yep, projects in developing countries.
Right.
So if you make a donation to our Patreon page, you're not only going to be supporting this podcast, you're also going to be supporting environmental projects in a developing country. All right, folks. So I think that's everything. We want to thank you for listening. Check out Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those things. And we'll see you next time.
Next time with a regular episode.
That's right.